Okay. So good morning, folks. Welcome to today's Lockstep Technology Group Tech Talk. Hope you're all having a great day. I know down here in South Louisiana, we've got some excellent weather. It's finally gotten cool, so that's really nice. So thanks for attending today's call. I think we've got a great one for you. As you know, the primary focus of these Tech Talks is to offer education and guidance to our customers. And I think we are spot on with that task today. And that task today is to talk about managed services. As many of you know, Lockstep Technology Group, we're a full service IT company, and a very important part of that are our managed services. And today we're going to have Brian Purcell, our VP of Managed Services Sales, to come on and offer guidance. If your organization is looking into managed services and maybe want to just put their toe in the water, wouldn't it be nice to have some guidance on perhaps evaluating an MSP, or what are the different types of MSP services that might be available? Well, that's what Brian's coming on to talk about. So he's going to offer some very good guidance, and that's based on his 24 plus years in the industry. He's got quite a long resume, and he's got a great deck and some great content. And we're going to turn it over to him in just a second. But one piece of administrivia: if you have questions, feel free to shout them out at any time. If you prefer to put the questions in the chat window, I will be manning the chat window. We always record this session, and we will send the recording out to everyone. By the way, if you want to be made aware of these tech talks, feel free to send me an email and join my customer email list so you can be made aware of things like these tech talks and the various classes that we teach and things like that. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Brian and let him give us some great guidance on managed services. Take it away, Brian.
Thank you, Pat. Appreciate it. I appreciate everybody coming today. I hope everyone's having a great day. And I'm big on sharing my experience, but most of the time really from a point of mistakes that I've made that could save you from making mistakes, or mistakes that I've seen. And in my managed services career, I've worked with dozens of organizations that I've personally helped enter into a managed services agreement. And early on in my career, I really didn't know what the most important things were, what to look at, what the traps were. And that took me some years to really get a good understanding of what to talk about in the beginning of the process that would help us to have a very fruitful and meaningful relationship that was a win-win for both parties. And so that's what I'm going to share today. If you're somebody who has managed services, you're looking at managed services, you've had a bad experience and you said no more, or you're just looking to avoid a bad experience, this is really what I'm going to get into. So I'll share with you what we're going to start with, and that's going to be a definition. So there are, everybody in the marketplace really wants to define managed services. It's such a broad topic, just like cloud. Cloud can mean so many things to so many different people. So for today's purpose, we're going to talk about managed services. And the basic definition is that they are IT functions that a service provider would perform for you that you would otherwise perform for yourself. And I think that keeps it simple for today's discussion. I'm not sure we can pinpoint just one definition for everybody, so we'll go with this one. And another dimension of it, if you break it down, it's basically you would be hiring a service provider to have access to their people, their process, and their technology that's packaged into a service. And you see the service word highlighted and in quotes. So service could mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Everybody here has experienced service, good and bad. If you go to a restaurant and you get bad service, you know what that looks like, and you know why it happened. You can describe what went wrong. And sometimes when you get good service, you can't really describe what went right. You just say, you know what, I think we got really good service. And if you try and break it down, there's some attributes of the experience that you had that would lend itself to be a good service. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. And as far as cost goes, so everybody, managed services, people want to talk about money first. They want to talk about cost. How much is it going to cost? And you know, the thing about managed services is cost is different than price. The price you pay should compare to the cost of you doing the service yourself or what you're paying somebody else to do it. And you know, what I like to say there is managed services should be things that you can do but choose not to do, and somebody else is doing for you at the same or less cost. And I'll talk about that a little bit later in the process. So here's what we'll cover today. So basically, why would you want or need managed services? So it's not always, you know, the title of the talk is are they right for your organization? And it's not a loaded question. It's not always a yes. There are times when they're not right from a host of different reasons, and we're going to talk about those. The categories of managed technology services. So these are how we break them down, and a lot of companies in the industry break them down into categories so that you can easily figure out what type of managed service you need, what to look for in an MSP. You may think it's obvious, but it's kind of like a job interview. And if you're not hiring MSPs on a regular basis, it can sometimes be a daunting task to know what to do and how to handle that process as you're going through it. And then how do you evaluate MSPs to make your choice? And here's one section. So best practices, these are some things that I've seen where in the past I have been a part of or witnessed when we skipped steps because we were trying to move too fast, or we didn't ask questions, or the customer didn't ask questions and we didn't offer answers. And those are some of the things that you can do to really prepare yourself to make sure that you are going to make the best decision and you're providing all the different service providers you're talking to the best way to have them serve your needs. So why would you want or need managed services? So this is kind of the biggest one. You either have or you anticipate staff and or skill shortages. So this comes into play a lot with compliance and cybersecurity, some new technologies. If you're doing integrations, you might not have the skills to do certain things to help do those integrations, and you may not want to hire. So if you have or foresee skill shortages, a lot of times companies will look for a way to find a managed service to fill that void. This is more proactive. If your organization is shifting, you want to shift your IT team from day-to-day to strategic. And you'll probably hear this a lot, like when people are trying to tell you why managed service is a good thing. It's not always practical. We were talking about wearing many hats. It would be great to shift from 3 people performing the job of 5 and shifting to strategic, but who's going to do the operational? And if it's not ready to move to a service provider, who's going to get it ready and help you to make that transition? So this is one reason why some companies do it, and sometimes it's for job retention. So they want to keep their people, and the people want to get out from under reading logs all day or checking backups. You want to lower your overall IT costs. So this is, again, the finance, and this one's controversial. So managed services are not always, from a total cost of ownership standpoint, they're not always less than what you could do to do it yourself. But the reason you would pay more is because if you were to hire somebody to do those managed services, you could then grow your company. You could then add more people doing other things that help your organization to be more on task with their goals and mission. So, but really the goal all the time is, can we lower costs? Can we find a way to do the things that you're doing in a way that lowers costs and do it through efficiency and automation? And or you need to become more agile. So this was really prevalent during COVID, when a lot of organizations had to move really quickly, and the business moved quickly, and IT got stuck, and they didn't have the people with the right skills or the equipment or the infrastructure to shift to a new operating model. I'm not saying that if you had an MSP, they would be ready to do it at that point either, but it can be an expectation going forward that when you enter into a relationship with an MSP, that you could build in terms and conditions and into the design ways to be more agile. And the last one is looking to reduce capital purchases. In a lot of circumstances, you can just rent processor, you can rent memory, storage space for applications, so where you don't need to buy infrastructure yourself, and you don't need to own it. So those are some of the reasons. There's more out there that people would buy managed services, but these are the most common. And if we look at categories, so here's how we see the categories of managed services. If you are going to kind of take your entire operating environment and break it down into three different models that you could consume managed services from a provider. So the first would be operational. So these are tasks that are very well defined. They're isolated, and they can be lifted and shifted to a service provider, and have the service provider do them for a cost and look after them, so you don't need to look after them and watch them. And again, technically, they should be able to do it better, faster, and cheaper. And these are very little customization to these. Usually, you buy the service and you get what the service how it's defined and packaged. The service provider will package these in a more rigid fashion so they can be repeatable and done at scale, mostly to drive out costs so you pay less. And then you get into advanced, and you might hear advanced managed services. And again, we're going to talk about how people label things in the industry and how it can be confusing. But for this purpose, an advanced managed service would really be a combination of operational services that are more focused on the service delivering an outcome. And this would be a combination of any of the operational services, or maybe some custom services that you would have somebody do for you. And the benefit of these types of services is they're packaged, meaning that they're standardized from a technology standpoint and from a process standpoint to gain efficiency so that they lower cost to deliver. However, you might need customization for your organization as far as when things are done, how things are done. And really good service providers can give you these types of services with 80% being standard. So you really take advantage of cost savings and reliability and that the standardization brings, but it also gives you 20% flexibility to customize, so that you're not having to fully adapt to the service provider's process and procedure at the detriment to your business, that you can coexist. And These are, you might hear co-managed services where operations are commingled, where there's RACICs and roles and responsibilities to define who does what, where the lines are, and these are very well defined in that manner. And again, for all the same reasons of why you would need managed services, these could help out. They could also be fully managed, where you just say, take it all, give it back to me in a faster, better, and cheaper way. So those would be advanced. And then strategic would be, you may be in a situation where, it's great if you have everything where it needs to be and you can hand it to a service provider and they know how to carve it up and adapt it to their services and manage it in an effective way. But a lot of times it's not that way. So you might need to enter into a more strategic type managed service where the service provider is adapting almost entirely 80% to your environment, so that they could help you operate. And those are never meant to stay that way. Those are meant to be the first part of the engagement, where then you start to optimize. First you stabilize, then you optimize, and then you transform. And transforming means just taking a different state. So getting your environment into more of a model where it is easier to take advantage of cost savings that you would get through operational and advanced. So you may see different service providers call these different things, but there's basically the three categories in what you'll see in offerings.
Hey, Brian, I've got a question.
Okay.
So maybe you can correct me based on your years of experience. So you've got these three categories.
Mm-hmm.
And I would guess that there are times when a customer may feel that they need something in the advanced category or maybe in the strategic category, when in fact, perhaps it can be, it can be under the operational category. It could be a more, cookie cutter type of service, but they're looking at the service as the way they've always delivered it themselves, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to what are you trying, what's the outcome you want? And perhaps based on deeper inspection of what you're trying to accomplish for your organization, maybe they could be moved to the left, if you will. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And, the process reveals that, and I'll talk about the process and how important that is. If you have someone, you start talking to an MSP and they start to push you towards one of these categories, but they don't really understand your environment, the ins and the outs of it, that's a red flag. So these are just landing places for different environments. The process will reveal where we end up. And I'll talk about that. And there's also in the best practices, it talks how you can best prepare for that discussion. Thank you, Pat. All right, so what to look for in a managed service provider. So this is kind of going to be a rapid fire list. And again, you would think that these would be obvious, but if you're not, I bought a roof for my house at one point, and the roofs last like 20 years. So maybe I would do that once in my life, maybe twice. I didn't know what questions to ask. I didn't know what to look out for. I didn't know how to better manage the contractors or look out for things where they might be cutting corners. But I guarantee that I found out after, because roofs like to leak. And then when you go to sell your house, that you can see if that it wasn't done to code. So, those are the things to avoid. If you're not doing this all the time, this helps you to be aware of what to look for. So experience, that goes without saying. Everyone's going to say they have experience. You can talk to people and know if they have experience within their market. First thing obvious to do is look at how long they've been in business, the customers they've been serving, the types of environments they manage. And you can ask a lot of questions about that. And I would spend a lot of time on experience, having a service provider talk to you about the experience. Trust and transparency. So another overused phrase is, I want to be your trusted advisor. So trust is earned over time. And when you're in the process of evaluating managed services, there's motives involved. And it's trust is better established before the process takes place, or through the process. And they go hand in hand. So when you're talking to an MSP, transparency really will lead to trust. And I'll talk about that in just a couple of seconds here. But there's no one MSP that can do everything. And I think, one of the questions that I used to get a lot, that I still get a lot, is, I see that you do a lot of things, but what are you really good at? I want to know what's your sweet spot. And that might scare a lot of people because people don't want to talk about things that they're not good at. But I would share with you what we're really good at and what we are maybe average at, because my motivation and the MSP's motivation should be to serve your needs and to help you find the best in every category. And if we're not there, I should share that with you. I should tell you. Most of the time when I share that, the customer will say, well, if we end up choosing you, we'll go through that with you and maybe we can help you get better at it. But no one MSP can do everything. So are they sharing when they can't do something? That's the first thing to look for. If somebody's saying we can do it all, that's a red flag. If they answer too quick to yes without asking questions, if you say, hey, can you do this? And they don't ask clarifying questions or contextual questions to really understand what you're asking them to do, and they just say yes, that's a red flag. Can they share examples of when things went wrong and how they made it right? So when you're providing managed services, things will go wrong. And it's not about trying to make everything perfect. It's about, how do you respond? And how did you handle that? And how did you learn from that and make changes to get better? So this is where it's sounding like interview questions, but it's basically what you're doing. And this is an interesting one. So service providers like to bundle services, and some do it for, well, I don't want to condemn anybody, but here's what you need to look for. You need to look for, is the bundling of services designed to create efficiencies and value for you, or are they just trying to lump it all into one payment and not show you the details? And you might not know what you're getting. So always look for, what's in the bundle. Why did you bundle it that way? And when we productize offerings, we're doing it for the first reason. It needs to provide value for you and for us as a service provider, for us to be able to create efficiencies to drive down costs. And communication, communication has a lot to do with, what are you talking about? Are they bringing to bear the right people to discuss the right things at the right time in the process? Are they communicating clearly and effectively? Are the answers giving you more than what you ask for, or is it the least they can do? I saw a comedian, and I remember him saying, well, somebody said, well, it's the least I could do. And he said, how is that good? It's the least I can do. If I could do less, I would. It's not good at all. Are they doing the most they can do? Responsiveness, this one's, how quickly do they respond? Not only just respond to you, but respond with, can they get access to the resources and get the answers that you need to satisfy you? Attention to detail. So this one is, that's an either it's there or it's not. And detail means there's always questions. If you ask me a question, I'm going to ask you a question because I want to know the detail. I want to know what's going on behind it. Being inquisitive. So that's just asking questions, a lot of questions. It's kind of funny because a lot of times questions are not asked because they don't want to insult somebody, but I ask a lot of questions. I want to know the who, what, when, where, why, and how behind what you're doing, because that's going to help us to better design a solution. So being inquisitive is good. It's not questioning your capability. It's trying to get an understanding of what are we going to need to do for you in the best way possible. And that goes along with patience and listening. So listening is a skill. There's active listening where I'm listening to you. I hear what you say. I repeat it back to you. I ask questions. I demonstrate my understanding. And I'm patient in the process. I don't have something driving me to move faster. That's what you need to look for when you're in talks with a service provider. Service oriented. So this is a culture aspect. So a service oriented culture, people put out what is put into them. And when the organization is service oriented and we realize it's not our job just to tell you something went wrong, we're supposed to fix it for you. The service provider is to provide a service that you can feel. You feel like they are going above and beyond in the process. They're being proactive. They're looking for ways to help. And so again, they can't do everything, but what they do well. That's what you want to know. And what they can't do, they'll find solutions for. So we can collaborate on solutions. Well, we don't have that capability, but maybe we can do that together or find another solution for that. And, look for them to structure their offerings for efficiency, but have flexibility to adapt them when and where needed. So I call that flexible rigidity or rigid flexibility. It's a good thing to have in an offering because it means that there's standardization, but there's also, it can adapt to your needs. So how do you make the choice? So this is the hardest one. When you're comparing, this is another example of this is homeowners insurance or car insurance. They're all packaging those things differently. And so if you want to compare one to the other, you have to look at not just what's on the declaration page and see what the covered values are, but then you have to look into the additional services, and they like to throw things in as bundles that they can't break up. And it's hard to compare apples to apples, like for like. And it can make it impossible. They have different pricing models. And I'm not sure if anybody's ever seen that. If you have, I'd love to hear about it. If that's a real problem. I've seen it before, and it can be a real challenge to try and compare one service provider to another. So here's some ways to evaluate. So there's categories to evaluate managed service providers. So I start with financial. If we can't get into a financial ballpark, there's really no reason to talk about operational, technical, cultural. The financial really is something we should talk about up front. We should get it out of the way. We should understand, what are you trying to accomplish? Do you have a baseline cost for what these things cost you today? And do you have a target goal for a reduction? So, focus on total cost versus the price, because that's going to be important. If you focus on just the price, managed services are just going to look additive. Is there a baseline total cost of ownership where you've mapped out, well, what does it cost me, people, process, and technology to do this? And then, to make a shift to a service provider, there's always migration costs, and there's time, and there's overlap. So how long for the return on investment? So if you're going to save 10%, 15% by moving to a service provider, how long, once you add up all the costs to transition, will it take 6 months, 8 months, a year to realize that reduction and that savings? Will it be as easy to add, remove, change? These are, MACDs, moves, adds, changes, deletes. You think about the future, and am I going to be able to add, remove, change over time? Is that part of the financial model? Or am I locked into a price and contractually I have to spend that much over time? And here's another one. Can you sell this financial model to your organization? Like, are they, if you were to go for budget or say, here's what we want to do you have the tools to sell that? And does the service provider help you with providing a TCO ROI model to help you to sell it internally if that's direction you want to go? So the next category is operational, and these are in order of priority, really. So managed services are not just purely technical and price. The financial and operational need to be in place before you really even look at technical. And operations is how you run your operation. What you do on a day in, day out basis is going to be more aligned to the way that your organization runs. Is it going to be seasonal? Is it going to be, are you going to have periods of peaks and valleys? So you need to understand, does the service provider have the ability to align to your operational needs and your unique requirements? Is there a clearly articulated process for onboarding? Onboarding is not just a one-size-fits-all. There are phases, there are considerations for applications you might have or other operational needs. And then how will your operations coexist, commingle with the MSP? So this is where I've seen a lot of companies just kind of not focus on this in the beginning. So you think about scenarios. Think about over the past year, 2 years, what are some of the scenarios that you've encountered in your operations that if you were with a service provider, you would need them to be aware of, and you would need those built into the solution. So technical. So this is the technical design. And this is really where most people are comfortable. They want to see, all right, what are you putting in there? How are you configuring it? What does it look like? This is the part that I know. And this is the one I want to scrutinize the most because this is the part I know. Here, you just want to, every MSP has a team of sales engineers who will get to know your environment and then design these solutions. So make sure they can explain their technology choices. Here's why we picked this. You may not have picked a particular manufacturer or vendor or tool in your solution, but if you can explain to me why you picked it, and that's a good reason, okay, I'm good with that. So there should be a lot of collaboration there. And this one is really overlooked as well. So cultural. Every company has a culture. I'm not, it could be good, it could be bad. Culture is a manifestation of a lot of things. The type of business, the type of organization, the mission, the vision of the organization. Do you feel it's a match? And you really need to inspect this. So just as an example, a medical type company versus an education or government, they're going to have very different rhythms and very different senses of urgency around different things and different times. And you want to understand, do they match with your priorities? And then look at the core values of the service provider company and the operations team. So you want to get to know during the process, you want to talk to whoever runs their operation. And I'll tell you right now, so directors of operation for managed services, they are some of the most amazing people. and they are passionate about what they do and about their customers in general. That's what you should look for. Most everyone I know will be happy to share everything about how they run their organization, how they structure their people, how the tools are put in place to deliver the best experience to you. So definitely look into that. And that's why there's a checkbox next to this on the left. This is one you want to check. And then contractual. So contracts are there for something to refer to when things go wrong. They should never be the front and center basis of what you buy. They're just to help with resolving disputes. When it comes to SLAs, so this could be another one that's hard to understand. Are they comprehensive? If you have different elements in your environment, does one SLA for your network uptime correspond to your hosting uptime? Whenever something is interrupted, the environment is going to go down. So is the SLA environmental for all of the services? Is it under one SLA, or is it component based where they don't line up and then you're just subject to the weakest link in the process? And you would be frustrated. You couldn't explain to your end users. They just say, well, I can't get to this application. And you say, well, you can't explain why that happened. The SLAs are not environmental, they're component based. And so path and pace, your sales process and the solutioning process, working with sales engineer, should be a collaboration based on your urgency and timeline. So if it moves, if you feel rushed, it's not a good thing. It's okay to move fast. And, there's an example I like for this. Sometimes we need to move fast, and if your plane is late taking off, there's a pre-flight checklist. And it's never, ever good to skip steps in the pre-flight checklist. I've seen, and I don't know for sure, but it seemed to me like I've seen them go through it faster, but never skip a step. And you want to make sure it can be a little exhausting in the front of the process, especially if you're starting late, but you really need to look at all of these things to make a good decision. Getting into a bad relationship with an MSP is going to last for a long time. So, best practices for you as a consumer. So this is coaching for you. So here's things that you can do to better prepare yourself to engage with an MSP. And these are things that I've seen over the years that I've worked with customers that are in complete and total chaos. And I've worked with others that have things extremely well organized and prepared. I'm not saying one is better than the other. Every organization is where they are for a reason. It doesn't matter. You're not supposed to have everything packaged up perfect. If you're in a chaos model, you need help, and there's ways to get to a more structured model. But this is by far the best thing that I've ever seen one of my customers do. Was they prepared a summary of their organization. So you all know when you start talking to salespeople, they're going to ask you a bunch of questions. If you have all these questions answered beforehand and you just put them into a document and you publish this and say, if you haven't done your research, which you should have done, everything that you could do from what you can see from the outside in, here's something for you. Here's what we do. Here's who we do it for. Here's the size of our organization, how long we've been in business, what our goals are, what our challenges are. These things are good to give to an MSP. If you feel you can trust them, this information is good. It will be used for your benefit. And these are things that we should talk about. But preparing that beforehand allows you to give it to multiple people, and that it sets the stage for talking more deeply about requirements. And this one is, I'm encouraging you to be flexible. So MSPs will create package solutions because they're repeatable, they're scalable, flexible, reliable, compliant, and cost effective. That's designed to give you the best experience when we turn around, or when a service provider turns around and gives it back to you. So be flexible for the technology choices. Be open-minded about understanding why they picked, why they designed it, how they packaged it, to get a better feel for it if it doesn't align with the technology stack that you would have picked. So focus on the outcome of the service rather than the components. And I get scrutinized for overusing this analogy, but I'm going to use it today. And it's, you're buying a cake, and a cake is a lot of ingredients that go into there: milk, eggs, flour, sugar. Don't look so much at the type of milk and the eggs and the flour and the sugar. Look at the cake. And does the cake meet your needs? Is it going to make everybody at the party have more fun? So that's just some slight change of focus there. It's okay to dig into the ingredients, but instead of immediately saying, I wouldn't have used that, say, why did you use that? Help me understand why, so I can better enjoy my cake.
So if you do your homework and you're flexible and really evaluate your organization and your needs, you can have your cake and eat it too.
You just took the analogy to the next level, Pat. And so that's some best practice there. Be flexible. And here's another one: involve others and non-technical people. Involve the people that are going to consume the service. They're going to have some great questions. Service providers should be able to answer questions for non-technical people. And they can sometimes get an outside view, discern if the service provider is service oriented or not. And then here's one. I know this is sometimes hard to do, but don't wait until the need is dire. It's very hard to move really super fast through the process. It can be done. I'm not saying that it can't, but the earlier you start, the better. And I know why most people don't start early, because once you open that dialogue, then you get an endless barrage of people calling you and saying, hey, when are you going to do this? When are you going to do this? It's okay to start early. And I can't say I can stop that from happening, but you could say, I'm starting early. We're not ready to do anything. I'm trying to evaluate the possible direction for the future. And a service provider that's worth their weight will wait for that worth. And they will go along at your pace and urgency. So we covered everything that we needed to cover today on here. I'm just going to, if you'll allow me to indulge myself, you're probably wondering, well, who are these people if you don't know Lockstep? So I'm going to give you a little bit here. And I'm doing it at the end because this presentation was for you. We're going to share this part now, who we are, and we're putting you first. So if you haven't heard of us, we're Lockstep Technology Group. We were founded in 2008, so 16 years ago. You can see the number of clients we have. So we specialize in government, education, medical, and commercial. And we do that for a very specific reason, because when we serve a specific subsegment of the industry, we can better custom tailor our solutions, maintain expertise around the technologies in use in those verticals, and then also for servicing them and understanding their business. So we've got a tremendous amount of experience, a deep bench of engineers in the company that focus on delivering these services. And you can see our geography. So pretty much the Southeast 8 states, with offices in Dallas, Baton Rouge, Atlanta, and Greenville. Doesn't mean that's just where we operate. We'll go to any of the states listed there to help out. And we make a difference by focusing in different categories. So at our core, we're a value-added reseller. That was the history. We've done managed services from nearly the beginning of the company, from customers who said, hey, I need you to service this. So it's important because when you do managed services for a long time, you get better at it. It's hard to enter into that business today and be really good at it within the first 5 years. It doesn't matter how much automation you have, it takes service-oriented people to understand, and a lot of trial and error in the process, and we've gone through that already. Cybersecurity is a core of our business. You'll see it in the middle here. It's really embedded into everything we do, but it's also additive. So we have services that we provide where we can help you find a right solution that you want to buy, or we can provide you a managed service there. We also have data centers, several in the Southeast, and we have voice solutions to help you communicate better. We also do audiovisual and device. So a lot in the education space, we're doing interactive flat panels and devices for the desktop and everything that comes along with that. And we do mass communications, which is a real specialized solution to help with locking down a building or a set of buildings or a campus with intelligent sensors and automation at the doors and cameras and screening devices for venues. So we're very focused in these areas, and it's for a very specific reason. And I thought it was just important to show you the number of resources we have. I did the total somewhere. It's about 150, but we have our folks providing these services in these departments. And the worst thing you can get when you're with a service provider is you get somebody different all the time. They don't know you as a customer. They don't know what you're trying to accomplish. You know, we want continuity. We want to take care of our people, that we pour into them so that what comes out of them, you can tell that they're well treated and well trained folks. And the last slide here is just a good sampling of some of the customers. That'll be included in the deck. There's also some other use cases that we have in case you wanted to see them, but we're very proud of what we do. We have a lot of really passionate people who believe in our overall mission as a company, and I love it here after years in the industry, just to be able to be on purpose and helping companies to provide things to their customers and in a way that's meaningful to them. So with that, Pat, I turn it back to you.
Very good, Brian. Excellent information. Brian, question to you. If one of our customers is interested in pursuing managed services and wants to have a conversation with Lockstep, what do they do?
So you can contact me here. I'll get you the right person, or you could contact your sales rep. If you have one, if you're not a customer, then you can just contact me and I'll get you to the right place to help with start that discussion.
Very good. Very good. Folks, if you have any questions, feel free to shout them out. If you think of questions later, just drop us an email, drop Brian an email, and we'll get you some of the questions answered. As you know, we are recording this, so if you had to jump off or you've got others in your organization that would benefit from this webinar, we will be sending out the recording link. And if you are on my customer mailing list, email list already, you will get this automatically. Just send me an email and join my email list. So that email will be coming soon with the recording link. If you're interested in Brian's deck, just drop me or Brian an email. We'll get that to you. And stay tuned for our next Lockstep Group Tech Talk. We will probably have one in the December timeframe. So we will make you aware of when that will happen and the topic on that. And in the meantime, have a great rest of your day. Thank you all for attending. And thanks,
you.
Brian. Great
Okay.
job.
Thank you. Bye-bye.